and family law attorney. Welcome and thank you for joining us for this great video. We're talking today about legitimation here in the state of Georgia. Georgia is a very unique state for unwed fathers. Other states have other laws on the books. However, in the state of Georgia, if you are unwed, then you will need to go through the process of legitimation, even if you've gotten an administrative, kind of an administrative legitimation. We won't dive too deep into that, but we will talk a little bit about going forward what that looks like for unwed fathers here in the state of Georgia. So, dads, hear ye, listen up. If you are on the birth certificate, we'll talk a little bit about this later. That does not mean you are legitimized in the state of Georgia, and it does not automatically give you full rights to your minor children. Okay. So keep that in mind. That is one of the myths that we'll discuss. In fact, since we're on the topic of what we'll discuss, let's do a really brief roadmap. I'm going to discuss legitimation today. I'm going to talk a little bit about what legitimation is, define it. And again, this is all in the context of the state of Georgia. Talk to you about some of the pros and cons of going through the process of legitimation, whether or not it's something that you can do pro se, that is without an attorney, the benefits of doing it without an attorney, the benefits of retaining counsel and having them represent you going through the process. Things you might want to watch out for, some of the common mistakes and errors that we see in some of those pro se cases or cases where even if they're represented, maybe their counsel is not as familiar with the process of legitimation. So there's some things to look out for, some red flags, if you will. Okay. So that is what I will be discussing today. Thank you again for joining us. Make sure that you like and follow our videos. Make sure that you essentially like and follow us on social media, other platforms like Instagram, Facebook. We have a lot of announcements. We have a lot of resources. We also basically give timelines for things like seminars, webinars, Instagram lives, and you will need to follow us to make sure that you are getting notifications. So make sure that you like and follow this video, share the video. If you have a brother, cousin, uncle that needs to be legitimized, they're having difficulty seeing their minor children. And it's something that, of course, we can help with. If you want to know a little bit about our law firm, I am one of a tandem. So we are a boutique law firm, myself and my partner, attorney Chelsea Wilkerson. We focus almost exclusively on divorce, family law, men's rights, as well as criminal defense. You got a couple options. You can go to the link in our bio, tap that, and it'll bring you to our website, and you can get signed up for a consultation, or you can just give us a call. We have two numbers for you: 478-845-1213 and 404-999-9529, 404-999-9 law, all right, LAW. All right, so you can give us a call. We'd be more than happy to set up a consultation to see if we can help you out. All right. So today we're talking legitimation. So why legitimation matters. And again, if you're an unwed father, this is a very important topic for you. One, what legitimation can do is protect your relationship with your child. And so that should be very important to you. And it's a way of course, going through a judicial process of, and some people will say, getting paperwork so that your child can inherit from you. The state recognizes the relationship between father and child. And then, of course, you have certain visitation rights by way of the parenting plan. And so we'll get into that here very briefly. So a simple explanation of legitimation is it's the legal process where fathers can establish their rights. And this again for unwed fathers, right? If you're married, the presumption is in the state of Georgia that the children that are issue of that marriage are yours. You have custodial rights. Okay. So what can a legitimation do? Um, Great question. I'm glad you asked. And so let me let you know. It can establish custody rights which I talked about briefly, and it also can establish visitation, right? So those two things are intertwined. It also can establish parenting rights, again, intertwined in all of this, and it gives you a legal voice when it comes to the upbringing of your child prior to legitimation. If you have not gone through that process, judicial process, you do not have any rights to the minor child. And we'll talk about some of the myths here that sometimes fathers are under the impression that somehow or other they have rights. If you have not gone through the legitimation process in the state of Georgia, I have as much right to you, your child, as you do. Okay, meaning you have no rights. Okay, all the rights lie with the mother. Okay, and so we can talk a little bit more. And matter of fact, let's do that. Talk a little bit more about why legitimation is important. So without legitimation, you understand that your rights are limited, fathers. Okay, and so there are some agencies. I do want to pause. There are some agencies out there that are fighting for fathers. Agencies out there that are educating dads on why it's important to be legitimized, what that looks like. There's a couple agencies, their names escape me right now, that we have worked with in Atlanta. And again, it's a men's rights agency. They advocate really hard for fathers and dads, and they have a lot of resources. And if it comes to my mind as we're discussing legitimation this evening, I will absolutely share that information with you. But in the meantime, get on Google, look at men's rights and men's rights advocates, and you will probably come across. I think it's something with fatherhood. Fatherhood. I think it's the Fatherhood Initiative, and so they are very very helpful. We have worked with them in the past, and they do a lot of great work with guys. Okay, so make sure you take a look. They might have some excellent resources for you. So, why does legitimation matter for dads? Okay, another great question, right? You guys are on the roll today. So, legitimation matters for a couple of reasons. One, it gives you an opportunity to spend time, quality time, with your minor child, and it can set up, again, custody and visitation. But most importantly, it helps you, and it paves the way for you to participate in decisions like the education of the minor child, the religious upbringing of the minor child's extracurricular activities, and then even some major and minor medical decisions. So those are things that legitimation opens the door for dads to participate in. While you might not be the final decision maker because you may or may not be the non-custodial parent, it does give you a voice, especially if that parenting plan is well written. That's up to your counsel, or if you can do the research yourself. There is language that needs to go into these parenting plans that gives you a voice. Okay, it's important that you have a voice, fathers, in the upbringing of your children, and this legitimation gives you that. Okay, so that's why it's important. And I want you to always remember that if you are in a situation where you are not involved in uh, the upbringing of your child, maybe due to a myriad of reasons. Maybe there's parental alienation that's going on. You do have a recourse, okay? And it is through the courts, right? You can establish, and you want to make sure that you establish it early because there's something you don't want to abandon your interest, right? And so if there has been a long lapse in your interaction with the minor child, the custodial parent can say, "Hey, you've abandoned your interest," right? And they can move to essentially, if you decide to try to be legitimated at a later time and date, they can make basically a counter argument stating that, "Hey, Your Honor, as a potential as the putative father, the opposing side had no interest and he's abandoned his opportunity, all right, to be a father to the child." So you want to make sure that you jump on this stuff and that you remain active and involved in your child's life, and you want to be official. And so the best way to be official in the state of Georgia is to go through this process if you are unmarried. Okay, So let's discuss, and I talked a little bit about this briefly earlier. Let's discuss some of the myths that the fathers that we work with are operating under. Let's talk about myth one. Myth one is that, and I talked about this at the start, at the outset, I said, hey, I signed that birth certificate. I'm legitimized. I'm good. I have rights, right? And if you believe that, if you're under that impression, you are sadly mistaken in the state of Georgia, right? Signing the birth certificate alone does not equal legitimation. Okay. And so if you followed us, you'd already know that though, right? Because we talk a lot about that on social media. Talk a lot about that in a lot of the resources that we offer in some of the books. You have to be legitimized, and signing that birth certificate amounts to a hill of beans. Okay, let's talk about myth number two. Hey, Attorney Shakan, I'm good. Not only did I sign the birth certificate, I am under a child support order, so I'm squared away. You are 0 for 2 if you believe that, right? So you can, in the state of Georgia, be under a child support obligation. And I know how crazy it sounds, right? You can be on the hook with the state of Georgia for child support. However, you can still have no rights, no parenting rights when it comes to that minor child. All right, and that is very true for a lot of the fathers that come to us prior to being legitimized, and that is sometimes the impetus of how why they decided to come see us in the first place is because hey, I just got hit with this child support obligation, but I can't even go pick up my son. Right? I don't, the police were called out and they asked to see the parenting plan. I told them I hadn't gone through the legitimation process and they kicked me off the premises, say I don't have any rights. So I need to, do something to, facilitate a process at which I can obtain rights to my child that I'm on the hook to pay child support to the not to the custodial parent. But I have no access to my child that we have together. So that is very much a myth. Those two myths. But myth number two, I think we hear a little bit more about, at least at our law firm. Dads are paying child support; they're under a child support obligation, and they have no access to their children. Right? It's very very sad. All right. So the reality is, paying support alone, guys, does not automatically legitimate you here in the state of Georgia. And so let's discuss some of the pros. So as we went over the two myths, let's discuss some of the pros of being legitimized. There are pros and there are cons of being legitimized. Okay. And you might guess to what some of the cons are. I talked with the dad today and we went over some of those cons, but we'll go over them here in a second. Pro number one is you now have an enforceable child visitation, child custody, parenting plan that essentially the parties are obligated to honor. Okay. We'll talk about what happens when one of the parties elects not to honor that obligation, but you have an enforceable order in your hand, okay, from a judge, right, that is signed, okay? And so you have rights. You have access to your child on whatever days were designated by the courts. Maybe that is going to be every other weekend. Maybe that's going to be 2 weeks in the summer or a month in the summer. Or maybe it's going to be, flip flopping of holidays, right? Maybe on your birthday, maybe on Father's Day. All of those things will be spelled out in the parenting plan. Pick up and drop off. All of that stuff will be in the parenting plan. Okay. And that's one of the benefits. That's one of the pros of going through this process is it is all typed up and it is all spelled out. And so there should be no confusion about how visitation works, what time visitation is supposed to occur, what are your obligations and rights under the parenting plan, and then essentially what the expectations are for facilitating all of that, right? So those are the benefits. That's the perk to going through this process. And so benefit two is it's going to be basically establishing that parenting time and custody. All right, so we talked a little bit about what comes with that custody, right? And so again, religious upbringing, right? You can essentially provide feedback, to the custodial parent, educational upbringing, right? So you can contribute your thoughts on how the homework should be done, extracurricular activities, what you believe your minor child should be participating in. Maybe you want the child to play baseball. Maybe you want the child to play football or soccer, right? The parenting plan gives you a voice. It should be articulated in that parenting plan. What that looks like. Maybe it's just a discussion. Maybe you're not the final decision maker, but it gives you a voice. Maybe that's more than you had previously, where you had no say so. Okay. However, a voice is important, right? And so it does give you a voice, and that's pretty important. And then it protects the child's rights, right? So if anything ever happens to you, the child can inherit from you, okay, because you've gone through the legitimation process. Gives you that legal recognition, and then lastly, it's going to be stability. It gives you a lot of stability, okay. So now you know when your visitation is, so if it's every other weekend, or let's just say it's the first, third, and fifth weekend of the month when there is a fifth weekend, then and maybe it's established at Friday at 6 p.m. till Sunday at 6 p.m. So we know the first, third, fifth weekend of the month, when there is a weekend, your visitation starts that Friday at 6 p.m. and it goes to Sunday at 6 p.m. You are responsible for pickup. Maybe you're also responsible for drop off. Maybe in the parenting plan, it says that you guys are going to meet in the Walmart parking lot, right? All of that is spelled out in the parenting plan, and it's all done for your benefit, and it's done to minimize disruption. So if you guys, and I'll say you guys, I mean the parents, if y'all can't get along, if y'all fight like cats and dogs, maybe y'all have to meet out in public to do these exchanges. Maybe that is, memorialized in that parenting plan for that reason, because y'all like to put your paws on each other. All right. And so that is to help minimize all the boxing between the parents. Okay. So that kind of stuff can go into the parenting plan. And it all it does is it helps you, right? It's to your benefit to have that stuff spelled out, especially if you guys have a really, really difficult time just communicating with one another. Sometimes when folks fall out romantically, or someone has cheated on the other party, or if God forbid y'all were married and that's your former spouse, and there's this residual resentment from how the marriage, how it crumbled, or maybe you are the party that the other side believes is responsible for the demise of the relationship. Unfortunately, it happens 1,000 times. The minor children are used as little pawns on a great big chessboard that is being played on by their parents. Okay. And so if you are a dad, and of course, when I talked about being divorced, that's not has anything to do with legitimation. But if you are a father, this is where having that type of paperwork, and if you are going through a divorce and you're a dad, then there's still going to be a parenting plan on the back end of that divorce, if you guys have children together, that is going to need to be worked on as well, right? And it's going to address custody as well. But for my unwed dads, this is for you. This video, again, that parenting plan is going to be important, especially if you guys have difficulty getting along. Okay. All right, let's move along, guys. So let's talk a little bit now about some of the cons of going forward with legitimation. And I guarantee you, the first one is one you're very familiar with and can probably guess. There is likely going to be a child support order on the back end of this. Okay. So for my dads that are like, yes, 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 hallelujah, amen to everything I'm saying. But when I mention when I mention that it'll be a child support order, they're like, oh, well, time up. You didn't say anything about a child support order, Attorney Chicago. Yes, there will likely be a child support order, but a lot of my dads, a lot of our fathers that engage us, they don't realize they already give a lot in the way of support, whether that's going to be gifts, whether that is the opposing side can give them a call whenever they need, something for, let's just say there's work related childcare, medical expenses. So they may not realize that they're already paying a lot in child support. And this just only kind of really um, does something that's really official. And basically, how child support is calculated. If you follow this, guys, you already know the answer to this question. It is by taking the combined adjusted gross income of both parents, okay? And then assigning a pro rata share to the custodial and the non custodial parent. The non custodial parent pays their portion over to the custodial parent, okay? So that is how child support is calculated here in the state of Georgia. And so that is one of the cons of going forward with this legitimation is you can expect a child support order on the back end of this thing. Also, if you file the legitimation as a father, what may happen is there might, some conflict might brew where there was none prior to this, right? So something, all of a sudden there were no issues. And now it's like, oh, because you're seeking this legitimation, you're looking to, become official, all of a sudden, you begin having parenting issues. And this is where the dad just really has to do a cost benefit analysis. This is on you. It's not on your counsel. And as you're calling around, you can ask attorneys, hey, what should I do? It's up to you because the reality is, and a lot of times our dads experience this. There are times of calm, and then there are just times in the relationship of turmoil where you can't get the access that you had to your child, right? And all of a sudden, all that goodwill and all that access is gone. And now you need some kind of a court order so that you can make sure that you see your child on a regular basis. That's where it would have benefited you to have some kind of an order of legitimation. So sometimes guys wait and they wait and they wait, and then one of the parties decides that they're going to make some kind of a change and bring on a different romantic partner. Someone gets upset, and usually it's our fathers. They decided that they have going to move in a different direction. They get a new girlfriend. All of a sudden, they can't see the child. Okay, and so we get a call, hey, I need to go through legitimation. And usually the regret is, oh, I should have did this 2 years ago when everything was amicable. And yes, you should you probably should have, right? Now it's going to be a dogfight. And it's probably going to be more expensive because it's going to be a dogfight. And in addition to that, whatever your child support order would have been, like think about inflation and the rising cost of living. Whatever your child support obligation might have been a year or 2 years ago, imagine what it's going to probably be now or 2 years from now, right? So those orders will stay in place until the minor child reaches the age of majority, graduates from high school or secondary school. Okay. But you can come back every couple of years and modify it. But the majority of people, don't. Okay. But you can do that, right? So you can do it through the child support agency. You can do it through the courts, right? We've represented parties that have done that. So that's one of the cons as the child support, and then the potential conflict. And then lastly, the one of the cons is it just takes time, right? People, do we live in a microwave fast food nation society? And people expect things, at the speed of lightning. If you are familiar with the court system, that is not how the court system works. It is completely antithetical to that. It works very slowly, and it moves at a snail's pace. And it's up to your counsel to kind of keep their foot on the neck of this process to move your case along. But it's still not a fast process, and it depends on what jurisdiction you're in. Certain jurisdictions around the state of Georgia are notoriously slow. And it doesn't matter who the attorney is, right? That jurisdiction just moves at a snail's pace, right? So it just depends on where you are, depends on how litigious things are, how much fighting there's going on. That is can potentially be a con in going through this process, right? So it's important to know you have rights and responsibilities, and you just have to do that cost benefit analysis about what you feel like is going to be a good idea to move forward with legitimation or not. Now, Can you represent yourself? We want to talk about pro se litigants. We get this call, or we get this question often. You can represent yourself whether you are in a domestic relations case or whether you are in a criminal defense case and you're on trial for murder. You can always represent yourself. And as I was explaining to a client today or a potential client, I can always work on my car myself. And, I can always elect to, try to fix my radiator or my air conditioner. I could do that myself. I could try to get on top of my roof and I could try to patch a hole in my roof myself. Does not mean that I'm going to be successful in those endeavors, right? It doesn't mean I don't work on my car myself because I don't want to be on the side of Interstate 75 because I feel like you're not going to stop for me when my car is overheated and smoke is billowing from the hood, right? So you can absolutely do this stuff yourself. It just requires you doing the research. It requires you putting in the energy. A lot of folks hire us because they already have a job and they are not looking to take on a second, right? And really trying to maneuver and understand all of the potential pitfalls when it comes to everything family law or criminal defense, right? And so they understand and recognize that maybe having an expert is going to be helpful. And so, if you elect to go pro se, you can absolutely do it yourself. Here are some things that you may want to take into consideration. I think it's okay to go pro se if both parents are in agreement, right? If y'all are in agreement on a lot, then maybe going pro se is not going to be too big of a deal. And then there major conflict. If you guys don't have any real major conflicts, and the situation is very simple, right? And when I say simple, I mean very simple. Then yeah, maybe going pro se is not going to be too much of an issue. But I want to preface that. I want to piggyback that with a warning. Okay, when it comes to custody, when it comes to child support, uh, those are things that you don't want to get wrong. If you get them wrong, then you're going to probably be back in court sooner rather than later. And it's going to be one of those situations. I always like to say, it's one of the things that I've heard carpenters say. You measure twice so that you can cut once. Okay, so if you do it right the first time, you don't have to come back. Right? If you flub it up, then there's always the chance that you're going to have to be under this child support obligation until you can get it modified, or you're going to have to operate under this terrible parenting plan until you can get it fixed. All right, and so those are the things that you want to be mindful of if you are going to work this thing yourself. Is understanding how that parenting plan needs to look. Also, an attorney can help you avoid paternity fraud. Okay, that is a bad word. A lot of dads are not really keen to what it might mean, but it is fairly rampant. All right. There was a study done in countries like Jamaica and Nigeria where it was uh, the numbers were much much higher than what we see here in the United States. However, just understand that it happens. We've had clients that it has happened to, and because we are very very proactive and because we are protective of our clients and our dads, because we're also men's rights attorneys, we make sure that we do our due diligence. What is paternity fraud? It is when you are under the impression that a minor child is yours and it is not. Okay. So imagine the hurt, the pain. I mean, we've seen national headlines where a father has raised a child and been under the impression the entire time that that child is his, only to learn that the child belonged to someone else. And are you going to get those resources back that you poured in? Probably not. Are you gonna what about all that love and affection or that you poured into that minor child, right? That was not yours, but you were under the impression that it was. So we help our dads, we make sure that if they give us the opportunity, that's big as well because at the end of the day, we're hired guns They tell us, hey, if that's something that they want to pursue, but we make sure that you are being legitimized for a child that is yours. That's the benefit in having counsel because some folks don't have attorneys. They say, "Oh, I took the baby to my mama, and my mama said that this is part of our bloodline, or that baby looks just like me." And that was the situation. And one of the fathers that we recently represented, he said the child looked just like him, and I guess it did. It wasn't his though. So and he had been paying child support for years, and he was very upset and distraught by the news. But guess what? The child was young. We saved him a decade of heartache and paying child support for a minor child that was not his. You talk about tens of thousands of dollars that were saved because we did our due diligence and we protected him and protected his rights. And so this is where a good advocacy it matters, guys, right? And so having the right law firm, having the right attorneys, we do our homework, we do our due diligence. We go looking, and we want to make sure that if you're going through this process, that Junior is actually Junior, okay? At least you're Junior, okay? So that's really important, and that's one of the dangers if you're going pro se. Some guys don't, you know they don't cover that base, okay, or they don't know how to cover. All right, now another way a an attorney can help is with child support, right? So a lot of times the child support agency, when they get involved, they don't necessarily do their due diligence in really verifying the incomes of the parties. And so you can get saddled with a child support obligation that is astronomical, guys. And so this is where your attorney having representation is helpful because we'll get engaged in the discovery process, and we'll start pulling domestic relations financial affidavits. We'll start subpoenaing records to make sure that child support number is accurate. Because if it's inaccurate, let's just say it's off by $300 over the course of 1 year, you're looking at $3,000. Okay. And then over 2 years, it's 6,000. So for every 4 years that you're under that bad child support obligation, you're looking at $12,000. So it's important that you get this is where an attorney earns their keep, right? So sometimes folks say, oh, attorneys are expensive. Well, a brain surgeon is expensive, a heart surgeon is expensive. But you bring those folks on, those experts on, so that you don't have problems later. So an attorney, a good attorney, will make sure that things are good and they are official and they are accurate so that you don't burn money over time. They save money over the long run. Okay. So they review calculations, will catch errors. We can request deviations. Sometimes parents are traveling from a few states over. We can request deviations in the child support, or you're paying for work related childcare expenses, or one parent is benefiting from child tax credits. Whatever, we can ask for deviations. Sometimes, if you're pro se, you don't know to ask for those things. But your counsel, if your counsel's any good, they'll look for these things, right? Little savings and discounts that might actually help you and help our clients. So, a good attorney can, through their calculations and due diligence, save clients over the course of their case, and maybe over the course of a few years, tens of thousands of dollars. And we've done that. We've done that quite often. All right. All right. So now a good attorney can also help with that parenting plan. That's another one, guys. A big one. Because a lot of our guys are, that come to us uh, either in divorce or, maybe they had a parenting plan. Previously, they were legitimized and they're terrible, right? They don't address things that they're supposed to address. They don't address all the holidays. They don't address things like the summers, what's happening in summer, what's talking about transportation. Maybe folks are out of state. How's the child getting back and forth? Who's on the hook for that financially? Who's responsible for it? Decision making and communication, right? So do you have access to your child? Can you call your child on the phone? If your child is underage, your child is a toddler, can you see your child on FaceTime? Can someone help facilitate that? All of these things can be addressed in the parenting plan. Okay. But if you are pro se, you may not know that, right? But your attorney, if they're a family law attorney and they're good, they should know those things and they should go looking for those things and they should establish those things inside that parenting plan, right? And you should, without you having to try to coach them up on it, right? And so that's why you're paying for someone else's expertise. We do our homework on this stuff, and we stay abreast of all of the new information coming out and new laws coming out about child custody, child support, all that stuff, so that you don't have to, right? We do all the heavy lifting, and that's exactly what you want. You want a law firm or an attorney that's going to do those things for you. Okay. All right. Now, an attorney can also help maximize your time with the child, right? So we can negotiate with the opposing side for parenting schedules that work for you, address relocation issues. So sometimes one parent might decide, "Hey, you know what? Um, I didn't really care for this order. I'm going to go this parenting plan. I'm just going to up and move to a different state. See you later." And maybe it's not addressed in the parenting plan. Maybe it should be. Okay. Maybe you need to have counsel that has the foresight to understand. Oh, that's something that probably needs to be incorporated into this parenting plan. Okay. Something else to think about. All right, something why another reason why having a good attorney is super super important. All right, now and perhaps again, I talked a little bit about paternity fraud. That's one of the reasons I think that is a great reason to bring on an attorney if you don't know how to protect your rights and make sure that you are not a victim or fall victim to paternity fraud. Again, DNA testing where appropriate, and sometimes folks, guys do it themselves, and I applaud them for doing that. Just make sure that it's accurate. But that's something that, in going through the legitimation process, an attorney should be doing to help earn their keep. Now, let's discuss really quickly enforcement issues. If you're having issues enforcing orders that go in place, maybe they're temporary orders, maybe they're orders that were issued in a previous case. An attorney can help with some of those contempt actions because sometimes you got to hold people in contempt. We have gotten opposing parties thrown in jail, right, because they refuse to honor the parenting plan that has been put in place. And the judge basically might give them an opportunity to fix themselves. And they elect because, they feel how they feel about the opposing parent. They may elect not to. And we'll say to the judge, "Hey, judge, um, the opposing side doesn't seem like they want to really follow your orders. Maybe they need to spend a few nights in jail to understand, the importance of allowing our client to basically have access to the minor child, given that was what your order was, right?" And so that's an attorney can help with enforcement and contempt if there, are issues regarding those things. Okay. All right. And so common mistakes that we see as we begin wrapping up that I see dads make is they're waiting too long to get legitimized. For all the reasons that we discussed, it's a bad idea. They're entering into informal agreements, agreements that they're not memorialized, they're not written down anywhere, even if there are. Sometimes people will write down an agreement, have it notarized, and like, hey, they're not following the agreement. Yeah, this is not a court ordered agreement. Okay, so they can choose to back out of any informal agreement, or they just assume rights exist that actually don't exist because either they've signed a birth certificate or they're under some kind of child support order, or they've made pinky promises and the opposing side is not honoring their pinky promise. So all of those are bad mistakes that we see dads make. So really quick simple roadmap I want you to think about if you again are going to do this pro se or if you have an attorney doing it. The petition gets filed, it's served on the other parent. Sometimes there's a DNA test in there. And then if there is a DNA test, there might be some mediation, negotiations. There's usually a hearing involved, and then there's going to be a court order on the back end of it. Okay. And so, as my final message to you guys, legitimation is more than paperwork. I want you to be mindful of that. Also, it's about protecting your rights and your bond that you have with your minor child. You have a voice as a father. I want you to always understand that you have a voice, you have rights to access your minor child. You have rights. You have the right to be in the life of your child and to pour into your child, to have a voice when it comes to how your child is raised, what their extracurricular activities are going to be, what their religious upbringing is going to look like, their education. You have rights as well. You need to exercise those rights. The best way to do that is going to be to go through an official process. If you are an unwed father here in the state of Georgia, go through the official process of getting legitimized. It creates all the stability that you want. All right. Guys, thank you again for joining us. If you are a dad going through legitimation or considering going through legitimation, reach out to us if you are thinking about retaining counsel to help facilitate that for you, and we'd be more than happy to. As I discussed, you have two telephone numbers you can call us on: 404-999-9529 or 478-845-1213. You can go to the link in our bio, and then you can also schedule a consultation. We also have some resources there for you. We have two books that are available to you on Amazon. And again, my name is Genghis Khan. I'm the managing attorney. And here on behalf of myself and attorney Chelsea Wilkerson, we thank you for joining us for this video. Make sure you tune in to all of our other videos. We have videos about criminal defense. We have videos about divorce, child custody, men's rights, family law. And so anything that's related to family law or criminal defense, that is our wheelhouse. All right, guys, I thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. In the meantime, be good to one another. And if you're a father, make sure that you get legitimized here in the state of Georgia. Thank you for joining me.